Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Get a thumbs up. Awesome. So my name is Nikita Saini, and I will be your host and moderator for today's Fireside Chat. And we're excited to welcome you to this event featuring two of TELUS's innovative technology teams, its Chief Technology Office and Future Friendly Technology Services to celebrate National Engineering Month. So today you'll be hearing from some of our superstar technology and engineering talent who will be discussing their engineering journeys and the innovative work they are engaged in to build remarkable outcomes for Canadians. They will also share their perspectives as women in technology and really highlighting inspirations and opportunities as well as some challenges. So before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping for today's call. Please remember to put yourself on mute and keep your camera off. Your participation throughout the event is highly encouraged, so please submit any questions or comments you may have through the Zoom chat window. And finally, this call is being recorded. I would like to start off by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge that TELUS's work spans many Indigenous territories and treaty areas. And for those attending this session, I also want to acknowledge the Indigenous territories and lands on which you are living and working. Now, for those that are not fully aware what National Engineering Month is all about, let me give you a quick synopsis. So National Engineering Month, NEM, is an annual campaign that takes place in the month of March, really celebrating engineering and the important role engineers play in society today. Organized by Engineers Canada and the Ontario Society for Professional Engineers, NEM provides a forum for students, engineers in training, and experienced engineers to learn and network with organizations. And TELUS is very excited to be a champion sponsor for such an amazing initiative. And with that, please join me in welcoming our 4 superstar panelists. First, we have Caroline Wood, a technology specialist and an outstanding team member who joined TELUS in 2021 as part of the Graduate Technology Leadership Rotational Program. Next, we have Sana Tariq, Principal Technology Architect who is working on cloud and service orchestration, vision, and roadmap. Sana is a PhD in computer science, Fulbright alumni from the University of Central Florida, and co-founder and vice chair of Google's Project Nephew. Next, we have Emily Harvey, who is a software developer working on the Optic TV video on-demand catalog and ensuring that video on-demand content flows through the system such that customers can watch the shows they want. Last but not least, we have Malika Shafage, an operational support engineer on our future-friendly technology services team, working to ensure the utmost reliability of the Optic TV Opus platform for our customers. Thank you again to all of our panelists for taking the time to be here and being a part of this exciting event. We're very excited to have you. Now, to get us started and get our panel started, we would love to hear about your backgrounds and on what really brought you to TELUS. We can start with Caroline, then proceed with Sana, then Emily, then Malika to finish us off there.
Great, yes, thank you, Nikita. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Caroline, and as Nikita mentioned, I'm a technology specialist here at TELUS, and I'm a part of our GTLP program. So I graduated from the University of Toronto in 2021 with a degree in computer engineering. And as a new grad, I joined TELUS shortly after to be a part of our Graduate Technology Leadership Program, which is a rotational development program with a focus on developing technology and leadership skills. And as a result, I've had the opportunity to rotate through 3 different teams here at TELUS and build out my skills with an exciting variety of technology. So on my first rotation, I was a member of our core network infrastructure team supporting the TELUS core network. And next, I was a member of our core network automation team supporting network automation and focusing on building out our software-defined networking capabilities. And now I'm a member of our digital team working to develop features for our TELUS.com website. And throughout all of these teams, I've focused mostly on software development, and now I'm positioned as a software developer. And I'll hand it off to Sana.
Thanks. I'm Sana Tariq, as introduced before. I think I started my career, educational career, long ago in 2005. I was graduate as a software engineer. Initially, I worked in the telco industry, and I pursued my master's from US, from University of Rochester. And then I loved studying in the space that I was studying in, and I received a Fulbright scholarship to extend my thesis of master's into a PhD. So I pursued my PhD from University of Central Florida in optical communications, majoring from the Department of Computer Science. And I continued working in the telecom industry. So my role that I joined after finishing my PhD was in United States, T-Mobile. where we worked on some futuristic services, some dark indie projects, some innovative work with the cutting edge technologies at that time. And during that time, there was an evolution happening towards virtualization and cloud. And I found this amazing opportunity at TELUS, where I could do what I really wanted to do at that time. And I joined the team 6 years ago in cloud and service orchestration. And I loved working in this team and in this role for the last so many years. And here I am with you guys today.
Hi, my name is Emily Harvey. I graduated from the University of Alberta in 2008 with a degree in computer science. I consider myself someone who just loves to code. I enjoyed code development. I find that it has such a creative element to it, and that's kind of where that's where my passion lies. When I graduated, I worked in industry for about 2 years, and then life happened. I had 2 kids. I became the official guardian of my brother who has a disability. So I spent 11 years on focusing on family and decided that mid-pandemic was the time to come back to work. So one thing that I'm thankful for is the fundamentals of technology, computer science are all the same right now. It looks a bit different when you look at how code is written and things like that, but the fundamentals are there. So jumping back in, I joined TELUS 2 years ago, and it was a great opportunity just to get my feet back on the ground and get back into something that I love doing. And it's solving problems that's not just school lunches.
Thank you. Hi, team. My name is Malika. I first started working for TELUS back in 2019 when I was just a university student working a part-time job. I worked at a retail location for a couple of months before I left to take an internship. In 2021, I graduated from what is now known as TMU with a degree in computer engineering. And after spending a couple months in the summer just celebrating that I finally graduated, I started looking for job opportunities. And since I previously worked for TELUS, I knew that I wanted to come back to the company. So I started applying to all the technical roles that were available until I finally landed an interview with my manager, and the rest is history.
Awesome. And it's really great to see we have a variety of experiences here and everyone's kind of at a different point in their career. So there's a lot of insights that we're excited to hear about. So kind of building off that, can you all tell us about your career journey, really highlighting on maybe any observations or specific challenges from the perspective of being a woman in the tech sector? Could start off with Caroline.
Definitely, yeah. So I did do an engineering degree in school, and I started into a tech career. I had tech internships, and a challenge I've observed throughout my engineering education and into my tech career is that, sometimes as women in tech, we need to work a little bit harder to have our voices and our opinions heard. And sometimes we need to work a bit harder to be seen as skilled or experts in technical areas. And as a result, when you know that you have something to bring to the table, I would encourage women to advocate for themselves, right? Make your voice heard and get other people in your corner who will support and advocate for you over time. Now, in my time at TELUS, I've felt that we do a great job of promoting and fostering an inclusive culture. And I've been able to advocate for myself and felt supported with opportunities to lead and build out relationships across the company. So although being underestimated in your technical expertise can be a challenge that you might face and is something that I've faced in the past, what has worked for me is to be brave and be confident in advocating for yourself to overcome that, right? Don't doubt your abilities. You know the value you bring, so show that to others.
Nikita, I go next?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Caroline. I think it was a very good perspective, and all of us can relate to each other's experiences and challenges as well. So for going through my list of challenges in my career journey so far, I had a long educational journey for about 7 years, and then I worked in industry for 15 years. So I'm trying to find the ones that actually stood out for me in the history. I'll start from the childhood. I think one of the biggest challenge that I had to encounter was to be able to become an engineer from the part of the world that I am from. I am from Pakistan, and in that world, girls were not, it was not very common for girls to get into the engineering profession. And there is a subconscious bias that exists even in families. So my father was an engineer, my brother was engineer. We were exposed to coding and Ataris like at a smaller age. It was just natural for me to be wanting to become an engineer growing up in that environment. But I had to struggle to convince everybody that I'm not going in medicine, I'm actually becoming an engineer, which I stood up for myself as a first step, and my family supported me. I ended up in one of the top schools, just to be surprised that on the whole campus, there are only 5 or 6 girls in total. And we have such small representation of females across the campus. We survived those years. I think people were supportive, and the world was evolving. And in junior years, more and more girls were coming in, which was kind of very promising in that stage. And the same low representation continued to go through my jobs and through my educational career that happened after my first industry job. And something very, very funny happened when I made the decision of pursuing my PhD. So other than the challenges of being a mother and pursuing a child with a PhD at that age, sometimes opportunities comes with challenges. And I found that I was applying to one of the top programs in optical communications at that time. So the 2 schools, Creole, that was one of the best optics school, and University of Arizona, the deans were competing to basically revise the offers to get me into their program. And I was surprised about this strange behavior. And I realized that I was the first female in the department, and they both wanted me to graduate from their university, which was a fun surprise for me to have that situation. And I think the third and the last challenge that I want to share with my audience here is that, and Emily can relate to some of that, finding the balance between being a mother and my family and between my ambitions. So I'm a highly ambitious person. I would give my best to my career or my education. Have been a top student and have had work very hard to be very good at my career, at where I could be. At every stage of my life, I think we are always trying to make a decision to grab an opportunity, or there is something pulling you back to basically bring an equilibrium and balance to your home and your family. Being a mother, you want to be with your kids emotionally, physically, in every step of the way. And then there is a part of you that wants to grow, that wants to learn, that wants to grab the opportunity. I think finding that balance, resolving that guilt, and building the equilibrium between your work life and your family life, that has been one of the biggest challenges for me, and it will continue to be, because there is no stopping. As you grow into your career, that's getting just more demanding as we go. And your children and your life around that is also dynamically shifting from their needs as they grow. So it's a dynamic equilibrium stage, which we are all constantly learning. And I think some of you can relate to that challenge that we will be experiencing in our journeys. Emily.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely understand that dynamic equilibrium thing. It's an everyday thing for me. Yeah, I think for me, the biggest part is exactly on that line with my career journey. Is that having a family does impact what my decisions were. In our society right now, I feel like women are still the traditional primary caregiver in many situations. And so it was, I remember looking at a career and talking with my peers, and some of them were deciding on their career path based on possible children they will have in the future, and whether the career path they chose will be able to juggle that type of balance. And one thing I think I'm learning on this end is you hear that tech sector changes. It's constantly changing. Everything looks different every couple of months. And coming back after 11 years or coming back after 2 years, it's all going to be new. So I think it's having that kind of curiosity and that drive to just want to learn more. I think being in the tech sector, you have that flexibility of just coming back and trying something new when you come back, and you're not completely out of the game if you step step out for a bit, or whatever you decide to do for that's best for yourself and your family, or whatever, wherever life brings you. I was doing some research before this talk, and I was looking at the technologies that we're using now. Jenkins, Docker, they didn't exist when I left industry, and they're full blown now. So everything will change, and you just kind of pick it up on this end when you come back.
Perfect. So my experiences within my career field are kind of a lot shorter, just because I have recently started within the more professional side of it. But my first visibility into the stigma around women in tech was observed when I was working at a retail company part-time. And during my time there, I would have colleagues come up to me and say things like, wow, you're actually working really well for a girl, or you're not so bad to work with. And I've had experiences with customers coming up to me and say, can I get assistance from a real tech specialist, as if I wasn't worthy of fixing their equipment. And statements like this at the time made me realize how underestimated women are in this tech industry. And it really highlighted how much harder we have to work in order to be taken seriously. And my second hardest experience with this stigma was when I was actually back in university. And I went to ask advice from my academic advisor at the time, who was supposed to help me, guide me throughout the rest of my education. And I went to him seeking advice. And his advice to me was actually I would be better off taking art at a completely different institution, and that I would not be successful in computer engineering. And at the time, his words stung so much, and it really stuck with me throughout the rest of my education. And I had other classmates I spoke to about this situation that happened with me. And it was kind of uncommon. It wasn't an uncommon thing for that particular academic advisor to give advice like that. So when I realized that, I kind of just ignored everything he basically said to me, and I kind of made it my mission to prove him wrong in a sense. And so I just continued with it, and I obviously graduated now. But it just kind of really does highlight how much harder women have to work just to even be considered as equal to men sometimes in this industry. But those were just some of my past experiences. Within my career field at TELUS, I've never really felt like that. There hasn't ever been this divide. And I haven't really ever been afraid of speaking up and questioning that I'm not like a valued team member. Just as the other panelists have mentioned, women really need to continue to be brave and confident and advocating for ourselves, and eventually just abolish the stigma around women in the tech sector, and just kind of highlight the fact that we are capable of doing anything just as well.
Absolutely. And I think we really touched on some key challenges, right? Especially when it comes to the complexity and intersectionality of being a professional in tech, and then being a woman in tech, the tech sector. So really important challenges, and kind of building on that discussion there. You know, and I'll open the floor to our panelists. Like, what would be some advice that you would want to give women, you know, specifically in technology and engineering? I know we've touched on a few points, but is there any, you know, explicit advice you would want to give when considering these areas that have like low representation of women, and both historically and across the industry today? Yeah, I can open the floor to our panelists.
Nikita, I can go first, giving a piece of advice which I think I would like to share with our women in technology today. I think the first thing that I learned over the last many years is that no idea that comes to your mind is a bad idea, or it's a small idea. Anything that you are thinking strongly about, if you feel that you're not the expert in the space, and if you feel that you haven't done enough research, and if you are in a fear that if you express that idea, it might be rejected or you might be taken aback, you need to kill that, and you need to get that idea forward and express that. I've learned a little bit of that during my PhD years, because sometimes you don't think that paper that you're thinking about would be published, but as soon as you get a publication, you feel that you were actually good in thinking that idea because peer reviewed that and it got actually published. So we get through a regression exercise that any small idea could be a hit. So speak about it and express that. I am seeing so many talented women across my career journey every day who have some amazing ideas, but who are holding it back to themselves and who don't have that confidence to express themselves. TELUS is an amazing environment, like Malika mentioned. Our ideas are well received. It's a thriving environment for innovation you can express, and your leadership is amazing in actually including you and valuing you and including you in big decision-making processes. I think we need to break that barrier, express our ideas within our organizations, in front of the leadership. And of course, if you find that chance at the stage of your career to go out in the industry, you will find that sometimes the small ideas can bring big differences. So one of the biggest advice I think I would like to share with women here in technology.
Yeah, just to go off of kind of what Sana was saying, an advice I would give to women in engineering is to not allow anyone doubt our capabilities. And we need to continue to be confident in who we are and don't let other people tell us that we're not. The trick it really is just to prove anyone who doubts that women can thrive in this industry wrong. And on another note, I just want to add in that we shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. And I feel as women in a male dominated industry, we sometimes are more cautious when we want to give opinions or suggestions because we're afraid of being undermined or afraid of being wrong. But the mistakes are really how we can grow and learn and continue to succeed just to better ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think those are really great points. And another common theme that I'm seeing across our panel is that, TELUS is really allowing for that, acceleration in the tech sector for women in terms of advocating for themselves and speaking. So, and really, also in terms of like addressing that intersectionality that women experience in the tech space. So really great theme and really great points that we're mentioning here. Before we get to the next question, just wanted to kind of highlight to our audience, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. And we'll try our best to kind of answer those at the end of the session. But with that, I'll kind of go on to our next question. Once again, kind of opening the floor to our panelists. Can you share any experiences around any influential role models or maybe mentors you have had throughout your career? And what key takeaway has stayed with you from that experience that you can share with us today?
Yeah, for sure. So I can start us off on this one. So I've been very fortunate to have multiple influential role models and mentors throughout my life. And notably, actually, it was my grade 10 science teacher who planted the seed in my mind of pursuing engineering as a career, because he just recognized my talent for the sciences and encouraged me to look into it, just kind of like offhand, hey, have you ever thought about going into engineering? And before that, I actually really hadn't considered it as a possibility. And so something so small made such a big difference for me and for where I'm at today. I'm lucky that my dad is actually an electrical engineer as well. So I've always had someone close to me that I could go to for support throughout my education. And then when I entered into my career, and from there, I've also been fortunate to have an excellent mentor here at TELUS, who I was connected with through the GTLP program. And he continues to support me in my career journey in engineering and at TELUS. So I do recognize that if someone doesn't have these role models or mentors in their life to give them that nudge in the right direction, or to share ideas and experiences with you around technology and engineering, it might not even enter your mind at a young age, right? And this is part of why inclusion and representation is so important. Because really, the more people that we can relate to in these careers and who bring us in and share ideas with us, the more likely we are to maybe pursue that in the future, but also just get excited and get curious about it, right? So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I can speak to this as well in terms of something else, or a more kind of natural influence in my life. I have a husband and close friends who are all in tech, and it's nice seeing, like, I followed them when I was focused on family, but also now that I'm back in industry, chatting with them and realizing that the problems I'm facing, they also have their own versions of it. And I think the biggest part I'm learning is that connecting with other people, talking about what you're feeling about a situation, expressing your ideas, you're probably not the only one thinking it. And building that community around you and just making sure you're reaching out to the people around you, it really helps you feel less isolated. You kind of realize that, hey, maybe what you're thinking, it isn't that bad. Like everybody has some kind of form with it, and that community kind of gives you that bravery that we've been talking about, kind of in and out with the other questions. But yeah, having that community, trying to reach out to other people, I think is a very huge part in being able to stay in a career. And yes, sometimes it looks like there's no other women in the room, but sometimes you have allies. There are always allies, someone there. So I think trying to find those allies and using that to help you find your footing and staying kind of present in where you are.
Awesome. And those are really great points, because like we're talking about, right, when it comes to the mentors, it's really about building that community. And it's okay to kind of reach out, and because everyone might have the same question, or we might share similar experiences. And even coming from like a remote perspective, sometimes it's nice to just reach out, because everyone's very open. And I know at TELUS, we all share that, where it's very open and everyone's very happy to kind of answer and welcome questions. So it's kind of like that ongoing learning experience and process. And with mentors and role models, we're able to kind of accelerate that and empower ourselves even more. So that's really great to hear. I think we're ready for some audience questions. We've got a few questions, so excited to get started on those. And they're all kind of building off of what our existing discussions are, so kind of diving even deeper. One of the questions we have here, I'm opening this up for our panels. Looking back at your career, what would be one thing you might change in your working environment to really address or eliminate bias? And this could be in previous experiences as well. Kind of opening it up to any of our panelists here.
I can start talking to it, and I'm sure my fellow panelists would have definitely more to add. I think the question itself has very tricky problem in it. How do you eliminate that bias? Because the bias is actually built into the DNA of how we are evolving and where we are coming from, where the women were in the history, and how that is constantly changing. So the change is going to change the bias. The representation of women in the industry is naturally going to evolve to the stage where that bias will be shifted. But if we have to physically change, then I think all the targets that are set across the industry for diversity and inclusion are actually trying to address those biases, to at least recognize them, that yes, they exist. Some of the problems that we see in our culture start from the childhood, where we are gifting a doll to a girl and we are giving Legos and trains and cars to a boy. So that's built in, and that's how we start shifting, that we start from childhood. We start giving girls Legos and blocks, as well as every gender, all same set of toys. And then you will see that the evolution into the tech fields is starting to change. In the workplace, it will start to show as we have more and more female representation, and the bias would naturally start shifting. I'll let other panelists jump in and share their perspective. How do we change the bias which is built in?
I'd like to add to that, actually. I find that a bit of a scary question. The bias is, we don't have the bias. It's people looking at us in where we are. And I find it a very hard balance to say that sometimes we don't want to make mistakes, because it feels like we are representing all women when we step in the room. And at the same time, we can't learn without making mistakes as well. So it's this tightrope I find that we're walking, to show that, hey, we show up, we can do it. And also being human at the same time, and trying to remember both parts of that when you're in a room with other people, and trying to represent but also be yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I'd like to just top up as well on what Sana said about, the natural shift as we bring more women into the industry, because there really is like still a stereotypical image of what someone in tech or what someone in engineering might look like, right? And people might think, well, that's not me. And I would say, well, the more people we're bringing in, the more we're shifting that, right? And the more that us as women have the courage to try new things, express our ideas, bring our new perspectives that haven't been tried before, this is how we're going to help shift this image and adjust that bias, right? Overcome that bias. So I just wanted to top up on that as well.
Yeah, pretty much it's been all covered, but just again, top off, but it has to start off from early years, just like how Emily and Sana had said, is that, just as starting off from kids, just having that division removed between what a woman can do or what a girl can do and what a boy should be expected to do. I think from starting from that childhood and going into, as they go throughout their education, when they come to things like applying to university, there will be more women that have interest in science and math and stuff like this, when they're kind of been exposed to it at a younger age.
That's some great discussion, and I think there are some interesting insights here that we kind of touched on. Sometimes we have this idea that, oh, maybe you can start looking into things maybe around the university age time, or when you're in your 20s or late, like when you're in late high school years. But it's really about starting way before that, right? It's about getting that exposure early on. And how do you know if you like something if you're not exposed to it? So it's really about kind of getting started early, and I think that's really interesting to note, and really great insight there for sure. Kind of moving on to another audience question we have is kind of knowing, and this is kind of more relating to more on a bit more technical side. So knowing that one of the themes of National Engineering Month is lifelong learning, now that you all are established in your professional careers, are there any education or maybe training opportunities you pursue to advance your knowledge and expertise? So would love to kind of share that knowledge with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start us on this one. So as someone who's particularly like very early on in my career, this is so important for me right now as well. And I just want to reiterate how Emily was talking about how fast-paced tech moves, right? So in this industry, it's especially relevant to always be learning, to always be bringing in more skills to your toolbox, right? So I'm lucky to be in our GTLP program, where we actually have a mandate around learning and development, where I do make time to do training and courses on new technologies. And I think that when these things are especially relevant for me is when I get to then apply it in my job, right? It can sometimes feel overwhelming where there's so many new technologies out there. It's like, which ones should I bring in? Which ones should I pay attention to? If you can get the opportunity to get onto a project or try something out in your free time that you're excited about, and then work in the course with your application of it, I find that that's when it sticks most for me. But yes, in terms of lifelong learning, super important in general, and even more important in this industry, I would feel.
Caroline, I think I would also love to agree with you on the lifelong learning aptitude, and also add one more angle to the dimension. I have been studying for a very long time in my life, which actually developed a habit of constantly learning in me, staying in touch with the industry, learning new technologies, trying out something new, coming out of your comfort zone every time, and exposing yourself to something that you don't know or you don't like, and then mastering it and feeling that satisfaction out of it is keeping you current in the industry. But there is another angle that I wanted to bring to our attention. We always focus on the academic learning side. For example, we are very academic in how we are growing in a career, and that's the technology side of it. But the other sides of your career growth are also extremely important. Something that you might have come across, there are 4 types of cues that we have probably not given attention to, especially in millennials. IQ, EQ, SQ, adversity quotient, AQ, if you have heard about that. Our ability to develop social skills and to connect with a large group of people, our ability to maintain a relationship over a long period of time, and our ability in one of the quotients is to react in a difficult situation and strike out of it and be strong. I think all these cues play an equally important role in how we grow in our career. Like educational aspect and learning new technologies is one thing, but all these soft skills, which I think were not emphasized long time ago, are extremely important. And I think when I came out of the PhD, I probably had a very good strength on the technical side. But what I kept learning, and I'm still learning, and I need to learn more, are the social side of the skills that helps us do what we want to do in a career and advance in our future dreams.
Just to kind of top up there as well, there's so many learning opportunities and lots of courses, but one thing that comes down to it a lot of the times when you're looking into these things is like the cost, and they're always so expensive, and like they're not always affordable for everyone to be able to go down that path. But I feel like now within our generation now, there's so many resources like YouTube and Google that you could just do your own research and kind of find your own interests, and don't allow like something just like a price tag on a course to stop you from actually like going into that field and like learning more about it. Just because you could go into YouTube and like find a video and watch someone else teach you for free as well.
One more thing to top up. Sana, I really appreciate what you're talking about the other cues, because I find that that part is very much missed when we think about education and training. And I would top up, like, training takes time, and as Malika said, it takes money. And when with balancing family, I was like, where do I find the time for anything else? And one thing I find myself building off of is just the relationships that you make. Other people know a lot of things. If you take that time, you sit with them, you learn, they'll teach you what they know. And it's not a certified course, but you learn a lot, you build that relationship with someone else, and you're doing two things at once. And it really helps with just, yeah, you learn, and you're making new friends usually.
I think that's a really great insights, especially when we're talking about soft skills, right? I think sometimes, especially when you think about tech sector or the technology industry, sometimes there's a kind of assumption that, oh, like it's you're kind of in a box, but it's so much more than that. And kind of TELUS really allows you to exercise a lot of those skills where you are presenting, right? You do get the opportunity to work in teams, you're collaborating. So that soft skills or some of those skills that maybe we sometimes overlook are definitely something that TELUS especially really, empowers our team members to kind of encourage. And like everyone was mentioning, there's so many things involved in intersectionality when you're in these professions, right? So really great points. And I think those are things that I'll definitely keep in my back pocket moving forward, because there's just so much to learn, right? So I think that's really great. We do have another question that I would like to also kind of ask. So like many other industries, women get underpaid in tech industries. So when compared to men with the same level of skill sets and knowledge for their job. So, how can we tackle that situation, or what are some of your thoughts on that topic?
I think one thing that I could add in there is, well, I wouldn't say as much now in today's day and age, but in the past, I feel like the more managerial positions were more dominated by the male figure, and it just so happened to fall out that way. But as more women are coming into this industry and going into these positions where they have the opportunity to say, hey, this person deserves more, I think that's what's really going to help. As well as it comes down to the fact that like we need to start compensating people for their skills, and not just based on a gender or based on how they just speak. Just pay them according for the skills and what they bring to the table.
Right. And Malika, I would like to add one more to that. Since women, back to all of the discussion that we had since the beginning, we sometimes don't think high about ourselves, and we don't ask for more, right? Probably it's one thing on our part to be able to bring our accomplishments to light, to make sure that we are communicating, to make sure that we are asking for what we deserve in the industry and at our level. I think we have to step up as well on the things that we deserve to accomplish. And I'm sure the world around us will start to shift gradually.
Very well said.
Right.
Absolutely. So we have another interesting question from the audience. So having graduated as one of the few female engineers way back in 1988, I have found that personal touch with encouraging young girls one-on-one into engineering and STEM has had successful effects. Tell us about your successes in encouraging a young girl to consider engineering as a career. Can you pass that over?
I think I can add, well, I have an idea of what it is. I haven't seen, I interact, my children are still quite young, so I interact with their friends and things like that. And I'm finding that it's just giving them the idea, changing that narrative when they say math is hard or science is hard, or saying, hey, it's fun to learn. It's a challenge. Like, you can only grow when you when you take something and you try to challenge yourself, and trying to kind of raise them up and say, give it a try. Don't just write it off. And I find that seems to giving them a bit more self-esteem, saying they can do it. They don't have to just see it as hard and then try to avoid it. And encouraging them to, in that regard, I find might help open doors and them to keep thinking about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Emily. It's kind of similar to what I'm thinking, where it's about, treating all younger people the same when we're speaking to them. It's what I was talking about earlier with mentorship, and if someone doesn't have someone with them to share experiences and bring them into what this world is, how else would they know, right? So if I'm talking to a younger person, I sometimes catch myself in that unconscious bias where it's like, what would you typically talk to this type of person about, right? It's like, that shouldn't matter, right? Like, bring younger people into these conversations, encourage, when I'm talking to younger girls, like, oh, have you heard of this? Or are you working with this in school? Like, let's chat about it, right? And that's how you can start to bring that excitement and that relevance to these topics.
Right. I would like to add more to Caroline and Emily's discussion. I think either we get inspiration from the real role models around us and we find that personal touch from them to learn and grow, either in families or teachers. Sometimes media is also influencing us, right? Talking about young girls, Caroline, you were saying, how are we feeding them? So I think one of the fundamentally wrong things that has been happening in the media industry, for example, you watch older Disney movies, there is a princess, and the princess is waiting for a prince to give her all the best wishes and dreams in her life. I was fundamentally very upset with this idea when I was showing these Disney movies to my daughters, and my daughters would keep asking me questions. Mommy, these girls are such powerless. What's wrong with them? Why are they not girl power? And gradually, the industry is shifting, and industry is actually making new movies where they're showing girls as superheroes. The girls can fly and they can fight and they can do things. I think the sources of our inspiration are coming from all different directions. And one of the angle is also the shift in media, which is actually building inspirations in the young girls now of what they're capable of accomplishing. Just waiting for a dream for a prince to actually give her a castle, or actually step up and do something for yourself. I would like the panelists to add their comments on what they feel about that.
Yeah, 100%, Sandy, you're right. I mean, it does really make you think back into like the childhood movies of what they used to be to what they are now. I can't remember the name of the exact movie, but there was the Spanish movie that now the women were actually the more powerful one. And it's very true. And it just, that's how we kind of start the whole conversation, is just from what we're feeding the children at such a young age. And it really goes down into what they're also learning at school. I feel like since the curriculum has changed since then, adding into things like robotics and coding and stuff like that at school is also helping them kind of get that visibility to those kind of fields, because at the time, I mean, at least for back in my age, it was like, okay, you could take this after school program. But if the after school program is between, like, I don't know, dance and cheerleading and robotics class, as a girl, like, I was just always leaning towards the more thing that all the rest of the girls were going into. But when it's part of the curriculum and you're in that course, you're being exposed to it already, it allows you to kind of find that interest. Oh, hey, I actually do like this. And then you could kind of take that on through the rest of their education years.
Exactly. Yeah, 100% agreed.
I think that really kind of brought up an interesting discussion because, like we said earlier, kind of early, starting early, right? But, media gets fed into our lives so early on, especially with the technology advancements we're making. So it's so critical to kind of understand that and the biases that are kind of in the media already and how we're kind of approaching that. So I think that's really interesting and definitely a great takeaway for all of us. And kind of similarly talking about women in tech, I wanted to ask you, and this is a question from the audience, what are maybe 1 or 2 steps women in tech can take to help support and uplift other women in the tech space?
I'm finding, yeah, I think I have a strong theme on connection, but just reaching out, saying hi, saying that I see you, I think are big parts in it. Is just that seeing, like, yeah, reaching out and just knowing that somebody else is there and you can at any time just send a message. I find it empowers each other. You let each other know you're available and you're ready for any questions and they're not alone.
Yeah.
I think one step that we can also start taking is to help the younger girls who are coming into your organization, provide them mentorship, provide them guidance. And I would expect the same from any leadership females, to basically be there for me, walk me through the steps that I'm going to go through. Provide that extra support system within our network of females, and to have that network available within our organization, I think is going to improve our experiences and our challenges.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo those sentiments for sure around connection, right? When you have an established community and an established support network, share that with other women, right? Reach out to someone and say, I don't have the ability to do this, but let me connect you with this other person and introduce you to this whole other area, right? Or, reach out and say, hey, I know you have this interest in data science. Have you heard about this panel that's going on at this time? Here's the link, right? So it's bringing people in to, maybe if you have that advantage of already having a bit of a community and a support network, bring other women in and, advocate for them when you see that they have talents, right? Recommend them for things, right? This is how we can support each other and bring each other up higher.
100%. Just to go off of what everyone else was kind of saying, I feel like maybe in the past it was kind of, there weren't that much room for women in this industry. So a lot of the times it was kind of, you learn something, you gatekeep it and you just go with it. But now, as we're trying to get everybody involved and have more women in this industry, it's just sharing the knowledge and just communicating with one another and supporting one another. You go and you learn something and it's just like, hey, do you want to learn this too? And again, reaching out and just saying, hey, I hear you and I see you.
I think that really kind of touches on, and all the points that we've made today. It's really about, supporting one another, empowering one another, and advocating for yourself, but also advocating for your peers. So I think that's really powerful. And it's also about kind of like reaching out, right? I think sometimes there's a little bit of hesitancy. It's like, oh, like, should I reach out? Like, you don't want to be, there's a little bit of hesitation there. But I think one of the great things, and I think TELUS really promotes that, is, it's okay to, reach out to anybody at any time. Ask that question because maybe they have the same question, or maybe if they don't have the answer, they can connect you to someone that does have the answer. So I think that culture is really ingrained within all of TELUS. So I think that's really, really exciting. And I'm glad that we all kind of share those same sentiments. And, those are all the questions we had from the audience. But definitely, we had a really great discussion today, and I really want to thank our panelists for sharing their stories and insights into their careers as engineering and technology professionals, and really diving deep into all the thoughts that maybe we wouldn't have known otherwise. So thank you so much for that. And of course, thank you to the audience for joining us today and also engaging in our discussion today. It really added a lot of value to our event today. And before our session closes out, I do want to say, please do keep an eye out on social media for additional content and programming throughout the month of March, as it is National Engineering Month. Find us on LinkedIn by looking up TELUS Future Friendly Technology Services. And as well as March 22nd, we'll be taking over National Engineering Month Instagram. So stay tuned for that. The account will be at NEM Ontario. So thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to the audience for joining us today and making this such an amazing and meaningful event. So thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.